Now, I've been noticing something in gaming for a while, and it's kind of upsetting me if I'm going to be really honest with you, and it's this trend, especially in AAA gaming, of games coming out completely unfinished, in poor quality, with day one DLC models already implemented before the first real update to the game goes live, games that should have been early access being launched as $60 games, and then having their communities completely split between whether or not it's complete dog shit, or if it's the best thing ever. It just seems like it's happening more and more over the last couple years, and the more that I look at it, the more I'm just like, God damn, when is this gonna stop? Now, I want to fully reiterate that along with this trend, of course, there are still amazing games coming out. There are still just fantastic titles that are being released every day that no one even knows about. There's indie games coming out for $5 or $10 that are better and more complete than $60 AAA early access titles every single day, and that's how the industry's been for years now. The indie developer has truly revolutionized gaming in many great ways, but I think personally that this is yet another bad way that they've done so, and it's not really the indie gamer's fault, it's more just businessman's fault. I keep seeing everyone say that, oh, the gaming industry, the fans are so toxic, they always complain over what they get, and I understand that. I can see where people can come off with that idea, but then at the same time, when you look at some of the games that have come out in recent years, you will definitely understand why a large majority of the gaming community can sometimes feel very betrayed by these game franchises that they've put sometimes decades into, and are now being treated like a virtual ATM, like an early access guinea pig, things like that. So, I think the quote-unquote noticeability of this whole trend, for me at least, really kicked off with No Man's Sky. Now, this was the first game I ever went to a midnight release for, way back in 2016. This game was just, it was probably one of my most hyped up games of all time. I had sunk so many hours into watching the gameplay from like IGN and other news organizations. I had just spent so much time researching the game, and it looked like it would have been right up my alley, so of course I pre-ordered it, and I went there at midnight, at release, to go and get my copy. But honestly, I think we all know the No Man's Sky story. Lots of lies were told by Hello Games to get that game sold. I think we all know that though. So, No Man's Sky was really when this whole thing kind of kicked off for me. And then of course, just in the last couple years, I mean, Far Cry 5, I was excited for that game, and while it definitely had some enjoyable aspects to it, like No Man's Sky did, it certainly wasn't the best game. It certainly wasn't the best game that they could have put out. And then the same thing with New Dawn. I went into New Dawn, unfortunately, for whatever reason, thinking that this was going to be something like a Fallout game, and that even though it basically took place right after Far Cry 5 in the same location, that, you know, I would have gotten a better Far Cry 5, that this game was going to be the Far Cry 5 2.0 that we all deserved after how lackluster Far Cry 5 truly was. Of course, I was entirely wrong. I was way off in assuming that. And then of course, Fallout 76 is probably the biggest example in reality that we've had, at least since No Man's Sky, if not bigger than No Man's Sky, because honestly, I feel like everyone just forgot about No Man's Sky after like a month, but even to this day, there's still articles coming out just completely panning Fallout 76. And in reality, I think this was the big shockwave through the industry that I think really highlighted this problem pretty well. Because here you have this AAA studio, Bethesda, who have made some of the greatest video games of all time. I mean, goddamn, have you played Skyrim? I personally haven't beaten it, but god, that game is good. You don't even have to beat the game to realize that it's just a great game. I mean, I loved Oblivion, I've never, for whatever reason, finished Skyrim, but Fallout New Vegas? Have you played that? That shit is just A1. It's just, you don't get a better story than that. That is, without a doubt, one of the greatest RPGs of all time. These people are not some 3 people sitting in a garage trying to make something out of their passion for gaming, okay? It's not some indie studio. But then you look at the way that they launched Fallout 76, and you look at the way that the game came out, and all the problems. I mean, the bugs, the errors, the lack of gameplay, they made it solely for money. I mean, it had microtransactions in the first day, it still has microtransactions and the game doesn't even function. People are getting banned for playing the game too much. There was like 9 different exploits being used to where people were literally selling the best weapons and stuff in the game on eBay. People were getting into developers' rooms and getting all the items in the game and seeing actual NPCs and things like that. Fallout was selling overpriced tarp jackets, you know, it doesn't really... They basically did everything wrong with that game. So with all this being said, it seems like there is definitely a trend in AAA games or games that are slated to be massive. And when it comes down to it, and I know I'm not the only person who thinks this, but I think a big part of why this is happening, especially at an almost increasing rate, I mean, even right now, a lot of people panned Anthem for saying that it was completely buggy on launch and that it was completely barren and that they didn't enjoy the content. I can't say anything about it because I didn't buy Anthem day one, because I knew for a fact that the game was going to have some sort of problems, okay? Honestly, I don't really trust EA games anymore. I've gotten to that point where I just figure that they're not going to be the best that they should be, and that the best time really to buy them is a couple months after they come out when they're on sale, because that's really about the time in which I'll actually start enjoying the game that they put out. But I didn't think that would really be a problem with Anthem. The real reason why I didn't buy Anthem on day one is because of the stupid launch schedule. I don't know why anyone ever thought that was a good idea, to launch different versions of the game on different platforms at different times in the day. Like, that was literally just the dumbest thing that I had ever seen, and I was glad to see people really kind of, I guess, rebelled against this whole schedule. But I think really the two biggest culprits of constantly doing this in the industry, just putting out these buggy, unreleased games that in reality should be early access titles, it's primarily at this point EA and Ubisoft. And I hate to say that because both companies have made some of my favorite video games of all time, but that's just the honest truth. I mean, you look at games that have come out in the last few years alone, okay? And this is where I really give a lot of praise to Nintendo, because their games are almost always released completely finished. It's the product that was intended to come out, and then the DLC is more or less kind of an afterthought. Hey, you want to support Nintendo a little bit more? Go ahead and pick up this season pass for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate and get some extra characters along the way. But I mean, looking at Nintendo, of course, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, that game is fantastic. I suck at it and I don't play it often because it pisses me off to get shit on, but it's an amazing game. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, already being hailed as one of the greatest video games of all time, and it just came out 2 years ago. These are games where you pay that $60 to get it. But when you do pay that $60, at least with Nintendo, I almost always feel like that $60 purchase is going to be worth it the moment that I buy it. When I pre-ordered Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, knowing that I'd only play it here and there because, I'm gonna be really honest, I'm not a huge Smash Bros. Fan. I mean, I still play Melee on the GameCube, but I knew that over time that $60 was gonna be good because I could still play the game here and there and have fun with it. I knew that it wasn't gonna be some early access, just crapshoot, hoping that the game worked today, and that the servers were online today, and that there wouldn't be $80 in microtransactions already shoved down my throat before the first real content update came. And I realized that in gaming used to be the standard, because I still own a PlayStation 2 and a GameCube. I went back and got them, I should say. Two of my favorite consoles of all time, and I play them both almost all the time, really. At this point, they are definitely up there with my PC and PS4 and Xbox One with how much time I put into them. And even to this day, I'm still buying GameCube games. Recently, I went out and bought like Simpsons Hit and Run, even though I should have probably bought that for the PS2. I went out and bought Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. I went out and bought Animal Crossing. And the more that I play these games, and the more that I play these older games like Star Wars Battlefront 2 from 2007, I realize how great gaming used to be, in the regard that when you paid $60 for a video game, when you brought it home, you knew for a fact that what you had in that case was going to be good. Or at least if it wasn't, it was going to be a functioning game. Nonetheless, it unfortunately feels like in today's gaming industry that when you buy a lot of these AAA games, you're basically just throwing the dice out there hoping. Well, I'm really excited for this game, but people are saying that it's most likely going to be like an early access title, so hopefully I didn't just waste $60 today, folks. And this was something that even happened up until like 4 years ago, okay? But now that these indie developers have come along, and it's not their fault once again, but now that these indie developers have come along, they've kind of revolutionized the industry with introducing basically the popularization of early access games. Games like Fortnite, you know, one of the biggest games of all time at this point, is still in early access. And even though Epic Games isn't really an indie developer, you know, they're not Bethesda, they're not, you know, Activision and the Call of Duty publishers, things like that. They've made some popular games, but they're not the biggest, you know, they're not like top 10. But now you see these top 10s, as I like to call them, the EAs, the Ubisofts, the Activisions, and their respective studios just trying to act like they're indie developers, because people have patience when it comes to indie developers. When 4 guys in the basement of one of the dudes' house are building a game that we all enjoy, and they're like, sorry guys, or you're going to have to wait another month to get this content update. The game's still in early access, you know, we have a lot of kinks we need to still work out with the game. People are almost always going to be like, yeah, you know, we understand that, because it's for people. But now you have these studios with hundreds, if not thousands of employees trying to mimic this behavior because they think that people are going to put up with it. And in reality, a lot of people do. That's why that we still see this. But thankfully, I think that that precedent is about to shift. I think that with games like Fallout 76 coming out in the way that they did, we're going to start seeing community just kind of come back. We're going to see communities band together and start actually changing things. And I hope that that's the case, because this new precedent in gaming isn't going to help gaming. If anything, it's going to lead to worse games, less consumer happiness, and probably overall less revenue down the line for a lot of these game industry companies and stuff like that. And that's not something that I want to see. I don't want to see another gaming crash. I don't want to see something like that happen, but I will say that if it does bring us back to that golden age of gaming, where I could load up my GameCube, and I could pop virtually any game in there. I could pop Metroid Prime in there. I could pop, God, you know, Super Smash Bros. Melee. I could pop in Paper Mario, Luigi's Mansion, or on the PS2, Call of Duty Finest Hour, just because I love Call of Duty. You know, Grand Theft Auto 3. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, Need for Speed, and I would know that these games were worth that money that I put into them, and that there wasn't going to be a major disappointment, most likely. If it means that we can go back to that, I'm 100% okay with it, so I think that that's probably better for gaming altogether. That's better for consumers. I just want to see something change. You know, I don't like when we have to deal with shit like this, when we have to deal with these AAA companies and these billion-dollar companies putting out early access titles and just completely screwing over the people who buy their games. I don't like seeing that. Anyways, thank you guys for watching this video. If you did enjoy, as always, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're brand new around here. Follow me on Twitter at @SubToOptimus. I post memes, thoughts, and updates over there. It's a surefire way to get notifications of my newest content. Join the Discord down below. Lots of great things going on over there. And until my next video, guys, this is Optimus, wanting that golden age of gaming back, and signing out.